Hi, everybody on LinkedIn and Facebook and the entire world. I'm Brenna with Seven Eagle, and today I have the absolute pleasure to talk to Mike, who's going to give us a little bit of information about a good cup of coffee and how he went from being in the Army to starting his own coffee company. So today I'm drinking some Aerial Resupply Coffee, and this is the Christmas Kitty blend. So thanks for being here with me today, Mike.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. This is an honor. I appreciate it.
So you were in the Army, you learned a bunch of skills, and you've now transferred them into making people's mornings that much better.
That's my goal. Yeah. So I learned some stuff in the Army. Let's put it that way. I learned something, and it's helped me through the rest of my life.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time in the Army. We really appreciate you serving our country. And I appreciate you serving my coffee now in the morning as well. So like I said, I'm drinking the Christmas Kitty, which your daughter designed the bag of. So I'm really excited to hear kind of how you took your skills and moved into the world of brewing.
Okay. So, well, I think, so I spent 20 years in the U.S. Army as a logistic. I spent 13 as a logistics officer and 7 as a military intelligence soldier. So I was enlisted first, crossed over to the dark side, as they say, became a quartermaster officer, where the important things to everyone was beans, bullets, and beds. Like, how do you keep everybody going and get them, all of the equipment and other supplies that they need. I actually preferred it over MI. It was, it's more fun helping people in a tangible way than it is in an intangible way, right?
Right.
And so, I moved through the ranks. I ended up retiring as a major, spent my last 2 years really in a training billet and working with training soldiers. And I think, as I gained experience in the Army, I would say that the skills that I really learned were, small unit operations to large unit operations, but really how to build, kind of a vision, how to take that vision from wherever it came from, where my commander or whoever, and operationalize it and make it so that there was some moving parts and some milestones. And I think that, in a sense, looking back, was, how do you create a business plan and how do you action that business plan? I don't think that there's, you could make the argument that it's fairly similar between, an operational order to take a unit, to a certain area, or, how to build what I'm building now with Aerial Resupply. And so I think that was a critical skill that I learned, at least towards the last part of my career.
Okay. So whether it's coffee or people, the steps are essentially the same.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, with coffee, I'm here to serve and make sure everybody's happy in the military. The end goal of the military is not necessarily to make the opposing side happy. So, I think there's a unique difference in that regard. But, I learned a lot of leadership. I learned team development, but I think I learned drive. As a field grade officer, you end up becoming kind of your own engine, so to speak. And so, I spent a lot of time keeping things going and self-determination. And so I think that helped me when I transitioned, because that never went away. And so, this has kind of helped, this venture with Aerial Resupply has kind of helped me keep that engine going. Let's put it that way. That's the best way to say it.
So did you think that you were going to be an entrepreneur and start your own company?
No. I think like most people who transition, like the number one goal is, hey, I need a job, like find employment. Like that's like number one. Right. And so I chose, that was my goal. Entrepreneurship was not even on my radar. And, so I actually started later than they tell you to, because they tell you, start 12 to 18 months out, sometimes 24 months. Personally, I think 2 years is a little too long, but start there. I actually started about 7 months out, through my own personal choices. And, that I think put myself under a little bit more pressure to, start learning the interview process, learning resumes,
Mhm.
learning,
Right.
go through TAPS, learn all the stuff that they don't teach you, and like learn the stuff that you really need to learn from people who've already done it, and then, actually get employed. So COVID helped me because it delayed a little bit. So it was a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I think for everybody, for me, it was a blessing and a curse. But it helped me, it helped delay things and gave me more time to spend in my SkillBridge program so that I could just get a little bit more corporate knowledge and understanding of how everything worked when you're not being paid by Uncle Sam.
Right. So what was your SkillBridge experience and how did it relate, if at all, to your current company?
So my destination when I exited the Army was to move back here to Charlottesville, Virginia. And when I looked for SkillBridge partners, I guess the best way to say it, there's
Mhm.
only one. It's Northrop Grumman. That's it, and there's nothing else. So I had to fight my way into a SkillBridge program.
Mhm.
Actually, and I did that through networking on LinkedIn with veterans, specifically veterans in C-suite positions. And so,
Mhm.
I wanted to do something completely different. So my SkillBridge company that I worked with was called Apex Clean Energy, which builds wind and solar energy farms. And they brought me on. It was great. I mean, I learned a lot about how corporate entities work, how small companies work. And I also got to learn very quickly, like kind of, I think where my gaps were in some of my knowledge. I was not an engineer. I was still learning and self-admittedly learning and playing catch up
Mhm.
with how um, communication worked inside of that organization. Some of the systems like, Office and Excel and, just technology stuff I was familiar with. But it was the application of all that kind of was something that I wasn't really familiar with. And so, but what it did give me time was it gave me time to learn, continue to network and continue to interview. And so that's when my first position and first role that I took after that was with a small company here in the area called Parasense. So it worked out, right? I think
Right.
the skill bridge, from a skill set, I think gave me a lot more confidence that I knew what I was doing outside the Army, and kind of showed me the hierarchy of how organizations work because I wouldn't have seen that otherwise.
Right. So do you think that hierarchy was the biggest shock between the civilian and military world, or was there something else that caught you off guard?
I think that I think it was a combination of that. I think it was a combination that everybody was in remote work because
Yeah.
of COVID, and so there was no real office environment. So it was like one day I turn a computer on and it's a Department of Defense computer, and the next day I turn a computer on and it's a private company's computer, right? And but like I didn't go anywhere, and so that was a shock because I had to I was learning it, but it was all like virtual learning, right? So I never really had a chance. My first real experience with being in the office was after my Skillbridge was over and I actually took my position.
That I've never thought about it that way, but you're right. You go just from being in uniform and, having one background to just being in the civilian world. Yeah, when it's all remote. I had not thought about that
Yeah,
aspect.
it
Mike.
was a shock. I mean, it's good though, right? Because I mean, everybody who I work with now you know is still very very personable. They're very helpful. If there's things I don't know, everybody wants to learn. And by now, now I know a lot about what I'm doing, so it's not as hard at all. It's fun. I like what I do, and it's just, but it's one of those things that you'll never really know, right? You don't
Right.
know it until you've had some time to experience it, and you know, it depends on the company as well. The company I'm with has been exceptional at supporting me through my transition, and
Mhm.
I'm looking to pay it back to other veterans here with not with Aerial, but with the company I'm with, MSA.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that period of uncomfortableness as you change from any position, especially the military, to civilian life. So, what advice would you give to people who are going through the Skill Bridge program when they're looking at what opportunities are ahead of them?
Well, I think there's like two schools of thought with SkillBridge, which is you go and look for a SkillBridge partner that you know is probably going to hire at the end, because that's kind of, I would say, the spirit of the SkillBridge program, right? Like it's all about you find a partner and then you work with them, and at the end they're like, "Hey, you're great. We're going to hire you," right? Like
Right.
that's really, I think, the intent of the program. But not everybody is prepared, or in an economic state to hire at the end. So the other way to look at it is you can find a job and a skill bridge position that gives you the skills that you would need, knowing full well that you're going to continue to network and continue to job search, and you're using you're in that program to give you time and breathing room and an education at the same time to make that leap. And
Right.
so, I would say it just depends on your circumstance. If you're moving to a military friendly city where there's a lot of skill bridge opportunities, like, here in Virginia, pretty much everything east of I-95 heading towards Norfolk is skill bridge friendly. But if you head west, like I did, there's nothing. So, you got to make that's a factor as you kind of decide where you're going to live post military.
Yeah, you're either going to have to live somewhere with lots of opportunities or be willing to go remote. Um,
Yeah.
so, when you were in the military, how much coffee did you drink?
I mean, so it basically kept me going for the last 5 years of my career. Like I think if somebody were to have taken a blood sample of me in the same way that you would check the motor oil in your car, most of it would have been coffee. So like that's something that you just, I think you kind of accept.
Yeah, I once had a facial, and as the lady was giving me my facial, she asked if I drank a lot of coffee, and I thought, well, that's an interesting talking point. And I'm like, yeah, I do. She said, it is just coming out of your pores. And I said, yep, that is how much coffee I drink. I said,
That's
it
right.
is literally coming out of my body
Well,
from
I
a
can't I
perspective.
can't say I drank great coffee in the Army because that's not true. And so that's, but again, I mean, the Army's goal is to feed as many people as it can. And so it buys all the coffee it can, but it's like coffee that is like 18 to 24 to 36 months old. So it's like,
Oh, come on.
appreciate it.
I go to every promotion for the cake and the coffee. Come on, Mike. Like the two factors, the two best things that are out there, the cake and
That's
the
right.
coffee.
Well, it was interesting. Like when so I spent some time in the Middle East, and it's one of those things where, I love my cooks. I mean, as a quartermaster officer, the cooks were kind of, field feeding was partly my responsibility, and so we would have our cooks make coffee every morning, and
Mhm.
I really cut my teeth on what I didn't like about coffee, thanks to them. I think they brewed it especially strong because I didn't like it as much from them, and so they tried to make it. It was one of those things like, "We're going to stick it to you," but it was, it it was good. It gave me a good learning experience on what I didn't like. Let's put it that way.
So was the coffee really 3 years old?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, sometimes it is. It depends on where you are. I mean, I think DoD, the field feeding guidelines and sourcing and kind of how the Army buys things. If you get it through the Army system, I mean, yeah, the bag of coffee is sitting in a warehouse for a length of time that you're not entirely sure, right? I
Oh,
mean,
man.
is it 3 years? Maybe. I mean, it's probably a lot closer than that. I think I'm probably going to offend some field or some food NCO or warrant officer that deals specifically with this while talking about it. But I mean, it's not good. Let's just put it that way.
So what is the shelf life of coffee? Does it depend on if it's whole bean versus ground?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think whole bean will last much, much, much longer because it's packed and sealed, and really, it's once you grind it is when it starts to really become stale. So you can get, I'd say, 4 to 6 months out of ground coffee, but I mean, really, you want to be drinking it within the first 2 weeks of it being ground.
Okay.
Um,
Well, good
from a
thing
freshness perspective.
okay, well,
Yeah.
I've already drank everything that I got last week from you, so we're
Well, there
safe
you go.
there.
See, you're good.
We're
You're
good.
good. So, but I mean, so it just depends. But see, the Army doesn't, and I would imagine all of DoD doesn't buy whole bean because it's not expecting soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to grind it once it gets to the other
Right.
side. So it's, here's ground coffee. So if it sits in a warehouse for a year, then it's already past. the best taste version of it. It might still be effective. It's a dry good, but it's not the greatest. Let's put it that way.
And should you store your coffee at home in the refrigerator or the freezer in a cabinet? Where do you store your coffee?
I store my coffee in the cabinet. Well, I store my coffee in my pantry, but I Ziploc it. So what I'll do is, so even though my bags come with the tin ties that help seal it, I will Ziploc. I'll put it in one of those gallon bags and then Ziploc it, and then and take all the air out of it just so it has. But the bags themselves have a valve to keep it fresh and to help keep the maximum flavor in it.
Mm-hmm. I love squeezing the bag of coffee and then having the smell come out of the valve when I get fresh coffee. Yeah. So how did you come up with the idea for Aerial Resupply? What are you guys doing to celebrate your first birthday or anniversary of the company? Like what do you see this kind of momentum going?
Well, so my number one goal with Aerial Resupply was to represent and to be a brand that spoke specifically towards the service support side of the military, and veterans, people who were, mechanics or logisticians like me, people who were, really even um, into, military spouses and families, because, that is the support base. I mean, people talk about, the NCO Corps being the backbone of the Army or the backbone of the service. And that's true. That's true, but they don't operate anywhere near that they need to operate if their family life isn't straight and their support comes from their families. And so for me, that was number one. That was what I wanted to do. And because I was a logistician, aerial delivery was like one of the coolest things that you could ever do. It's like, hey, let's, kick some things out the back of an aircraft or sling load it somewhere. So I was like, well, that seems like that's fun for me. So I think it might be fun for other people. So, it really stemmed from that. That was really what I stemmed for. I love coffee. I wanted to do something different. And I wanted to share kind of what I thought it should be with everybody. And so that's really the genesis of where Aerial Resupply came from.
So what have you learned as you've gone along? I know you've had to learn marketing, you've had to learn
I've learned everything.
coffee in general.
Yeah. So I've learned coffee sourcing. I've learned, you know, just, live, sleep, eat coffee, right? But then, you also have to learn, like I had to learn how to build my own website and code. I had to learn marketing. I had to learn SEO. I had to learn how to interact with a bunch of different vendor platforms that I'd never done before. I had to learn kind of what business formation was in terms of the different types of LLCs, the different types of accounting methods, the different types of resources that exist for small businesses. And then, I navigated through the Department of Veteran Affairs to become a service disabled veteran owned small business. So I'm accredited to do that. And, and so like there's a lot of different aspects that, I mean, in July of 2021, when this was not even in existence, I was learning through all of that because I'd never done it. And so there's been some hiccups along the way, obviously, and that's fine. I mean, I kind of subscribe to the idea of fail fast,
Right.
and then learn and move on. So, but yeah, it's been a unique and interesting experience.
What resources have you used to learn all that stuff, or has it just been trial by fire?
Mostly YouTube, actually. So YouTube is like, I mean, you can find anything on YouTube. But I would say, like if I had to go back and do it again, I would probably go find myself a score mentor right out of the gate. I would probably spend a little bit more time on not necessarily market research, but just how it all works, like in terms of, what the business plan and everything else should say, but understanding the different inputs that are going to come in, because you do have to pay attention to city, state, and or city, state, and national, federal taxes. You do have to pay attention to, what the state requires of you to be considered a legitimate business. There's also, like depending on your locality, it depends on how you deal with e-commerce taxes and how you deal with personal property taxes. And so, Uncle Sam will always come get its money. So you have to be sure that you understand what that ramification is. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I had not thought about YouTube as a source for learning. I always think of the normal ones like the Rosie Network, Onward to Opportunity, but YouTube, that is a solid
Well, so
recommendation.
when I got out of the military, so like I did sign up for the Rosie Network and they've been very helpful. And I did sign up for Onward to Opportunity, but I did that not from an entrepreneurship route, but to try to look at whether or not I wanted to get PMP certified for program
Okay.
management. And when I decided that that wasn't for me, and I didn't go back to them for entrepreneurship, it was kind of like maybe a self-fulfilling idea where I was just like, well, how hard can this be? I mean, millions of people start businesses all the time. Like, this can't be that hard. And so there was some ego that came with it, like, hey, I can do this. And so, I got kicked in the teeth a couple times, but I think, I'm celebrating 1 year and 12 days or 11 days. So, I mean, that's not too bad.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, congratulations. Are you guys going to celebrate? You're going to have a
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, the store has we kind of doing a 15-day countdown. So the store is everything's 15% off until the 15th. And then, I'm gonna on my actual got a couple reveals that I'm gonna do on the anniversary date, and get ready for the upcoming holiday season.
Yeah, that's exciting. And so your whole family helps out with this, right? Your daughter created Christmas Kitty
That's right.
design
Yeah,
work.
yeah. She was like, yeah. So she's 9, and so she said, she's like, hey, I really want to help, and I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, can I draw something? I was like, sure, draw whatever you want. And so this was, I think, October of last year, October, November. And she drew what you see as the label. Like, what you see on the label of Christmas Kitty is exactly what came off of her little mind and onto the piece of paper. And, I was like, that's great. And I just didn't even rename it. I was like, this is what we're going with. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's been like a huge success. It's one of it is probably the best flavored coffee that I've ever had. A lot of people tell me it's the best they've ever had. So I think it worked out.
Yeah. So we were talking about this earlier, but I am not a fan of flavored coffee. But because it was such a cute story behind it, I really wanted to support your daughter as her own like designer. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And I have it is really good flavored coffee. Like, there's two things I like about working from home. I get to pick my own coffee and I get to control the temperature of my office. But I would be totally fine if the office brewed Christmas Kitty, because it doesn't have any of the artificial flavoring. The taste of the bean still comes through. So I'm really impressed. I'm a satisfied coffee snob. So
Well, I appreciate that. And I think it's, for me, it was about setting an example for my daughter, that if she had an idea that she wanted to contribute, that it would become a reality. So it was, you know, hopefully someday when I'm not here anymore and my daughter is older and this is rolling along, this can be something she takes on. So trying to expose her to a few things.
yeah, that's amazing. I know my kids always want to help me with my work, and um, they'll sit in on meetings, but there's no design aspect. Otherwise, they would probably, I mean, kids always like to help, and it's good to be a role model. So whatever parents can do for their own kids, or just as an adult can do to be a role model to just kids in general, um, because so many life lessons are learned by watching those around you, both good and bad.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
does she have any other flavor designs she's coming up with in the future?
I'm sure she hasn't come back to me yet with anything else that she wants to do. Right now it's been a lot of, I think we've talked about some shirts and we've talked about maybe some apparel. So we'll
Like
see.
those
We'll see.
hats for cats, right?
Well, so that is one. She did mention that she wants to do hats for cats. So I gotta figure out how we're gonna do that. I don't know. I think I'd be the first veteran-owned coffee company selling hats for cats at that point, but we'll see.
I've never seen a cat wear a hat, so except for a cat in the hat,
I've never,
obviously.
yeah, I've never seen a cat wear a hat either, but there's a first for everything. Maybe it'll be like one of those hats that, you have it cut out so the ears can stick out, but it drapes down. So, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know.
That is awesome. So, if people would like to, what's your website if people are
So
interested in supporting you?
aerialresupplycoffee.com. So I think that's the best way. But you can buy, I mean, you can buy it pretty much anywhere. You can buy it on Amazon. It's on Walmart online. You can buy it through Facebook, Instagram. You can buy it through, man, there's a lot of places. I'm
Those
sorry.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I
No.
mean, you can find it pretty much. You know, if you're on ecom, if you're on a website, you can probably find it. Let's put
Okay,
it that way.
perfect. And if your local area doesn't carry it, then you can recommend that a store starts carrying it as well, right?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to talk to people who are open to carrying Aerial Resupply coffee and be a potential distributor. And or if if people own a small shop and they want to just put it there because their customers like the idea of supporting veteran-owned businesses, then I'm
Yeah.
happy to engage in that conversation. And that's an easy email, or you can either email me at info@aerialresupply.com, or you can aerialresupplycoffee.com, or you can just send me a note on LinkedIn. Either way works for me.
Perfect. And remember, you don't have to be a veteran to support veteran-owned businesses. So everybody wins when we buy veteran-owned and American-made products.
That's
So
right.
um, I love a good cup of coffee. And thanks, Mike, for being here with me today. Do you have any last comments or advice for anybody looking to either transition out, do skill bridge, or start their own company?
I would say that the number one thing from transitioning out that I learned the hard way is to never stop networking. It doesn't matter if you're just starting the process or if you've already completed the process. Never stop. You never know where another conversation will lead you to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know what you're going to learn over a cup of coffee.
That's right.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate chatting with you. Best of luck and happy first anniversary of Aerial Resupply. I'm looking forward to seeing all the great things you accomplish and what you do to support veterans.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.